Hey there. Just got out of a gig. On the contract, it says I play the ceremony and the cocktail hour. They thought I played the dinner, and so I played the dinner. But man, it was a long evening, and I didn't get paid for playing the dinner. But anyway, I wish I could share this email, but I'd have to crop it so you wouldn't, to protect the anonymity of the person. And they had emailed me a while back because they were getting ready to leave their institutional church because their pastor's backloading works into the gospel and they've had enough. Their family's in agreement. And they wanted to know if they should confront him. A lot of people email me this. Should I confront my pastor? And my advice was no. And the reason is because here's the thing. For people who leave these places, it is extremely traumatic. And they've got lots of friends there. Their conscience plagues them. And the reason they want to talk to the pastor is because their conscience is bothering them. And they're thinking, well, I should at least, maybe he doesn't know the truth and I should explain. And, it's their conscience. Well, when your conscience is troubling you, you're not bold. You're kind of vacillating. And unfortunately, the reason you were in that system in the first place, it's not like they suddenly started backloading works into the gospel. A lot of people go, man, I can't believe that guy suddenly started backloading in the gospel. I'm so disappointed. All these people that I thought were sound started backloading works into the gospel. What is the deal? This apostasy is just getting worse and worse. No, you're getting clearer and clearer. You're growing in the knowledge of the truth. You found food. And as you started getting healthy, you started discerning between good and evil. And light came and distinguished that which differs. Your love is abounding, and you're able to prove that which differs and is more excellent. It's good that you're growing in the knowledge of the truth and discerning. Your discernment's going to get sharper and sharper and sharper, and it's going to seem like more and more people are just going off the rails, but that's not what's happening. You're just getting clearer. Okay? So anyway, if you've been in an institutional church that's backloading works, they've been backloading works the whole time. The only difference is you. So the way you got into that place was that you weren't clear, and you were manipulated, and your conscience was hijacked, and they used the language of grace but stuffed it with all kinds of guilties and managed you. And especially in these smaller places, they know your number. And here's the thing about the institutional church pastors. You want to know what their skill set is? It's called managing people. Or you might want to call it leadership skills. Leadership skills and managing people is a fancy euphemism for manipulating. You say, my pastor's not manipulating me. Oh, really? Do you call him pastor? Yes. You pay him a tithe? Yes. You give him a tenth of your salary? Yes. Is he backloading works into the gospel? Yes. So anyway, pastors, their skill is manipulation, okay? Especially the ones that backload works into the gospel. They don't have spiritual gifting to be standing there. What they have the ability to do is persuade people to pay them to be their spiritual leader. And they're able to walk into a room and convince everybody that they're the spiritual authority. And that the way they do that is called leadership skills. It's a way of managing people's perception of you. That's what they're good at. What is their skill? Managing people's perceptions. Leadership skills. Managing people. That's why you're there, because you were managed. Now, as far as their education goes, these pastors like to call us internet squawkers, and we just aren't educated, don't know the Bible. Well, they have college classes. They love to say, oh, wait, no, the Greek and the Hebrew. They couldn't you could drop them off into the middle of Greece and say, you're not allowed to speak English. You see what they order. See if they can order 3 meals a day and find out where the bathroom is. They don't know Greek. What they have is the same thing you have. They have access to a Strong's Concordance and a Greek dictionary, maybe a Thayer's, and now they can sometimes say indicative mood. This verb's in the, that one's in the indicative, and that makes them sound like, oh, they really know. Well, if you go open blueletterbible.org and you look up the word, it tells you what the gender is and what the mood is. But these guys, I bet they couldn't diagram an English sentence. And I'm not saying I can. It's one of the things I want to learn to do. Is I feel like I could really benefit from learning to really diagram a English sentence. The reason I know that is because when I listen to them talk about the Bible, they go through verses and they clearly don't know what the subject of the verse is. They the ones that say, by grace you are saved through faith, and that not of yourself is the gift of God. And they say that the faith is the gift of God. And we just studied that a couple of weeks ago. I'm no smarty, I'm not as smart as people say that I am, but I grabbed the Greek and I found out that, the gender has to match the pronoun and the antecedent, and that faith is not the subject there in that sentence. Salvation is. But most pastors will tell you that, a lot of pastors will Calvinist pastors who backload works into the gospel will tell you that faith is the gift there. No, salvation is the gift. That's the subject of the sentence. Well, you know what? If they were good at just diagramming sentences in English, they'd probably be able to tell me that. And they can't. They took college classes. Now, I went to college. I got a college degree. Not in that, but in jazz studies. And you know what I learned? Nothing. Everything I've learned that's become practical to me on the bandstand, I've learned outside of school, except for one class, which was a jazz theory class that taught me how to analyze a tune. But everything I learned in college has been useless to me. And that's how these, I hate to say it, but that's how a lot of these seminaries are. And not only that, but what they learn, it's a course, it's a programmed course. So whatever they're learning is the doctrinal school of that particular seminary, and they are trained in a specific, they have to take a battery of courses that are all related to that specific subject. And it's not because they're particularly interested in those things necessarily. It's because they want to, somebody decided you've got leadership skills and you should become a pastor, so they went off to go get their degree so they could learn to be a pastor. And so they have to take all these courses. That's not why the normal Christian reads the Bible and learns. The normal Christian reads the Bible and learns because their shepherd is bringing them through so many things that cause them to have needs and hunger and thirst that he wants to satisfy. And then he satisfies them with the knowledge of the truth. And also they're brought through so many situations where hirelings and wolves set upon them and beat them and take advantage of them. And they have to learn the truth in order to be set free from all those different little prison systems that they get captivated by. Well, that's a desperate kind of seeking that's much different than the guy who goes to college and took a history class and he took a couple semesters of Greek, and he could at one time conjugate conjugate Greek verbs, but he doesn't remember that any more than you remember high school Spanish. You know, don't let these guys make you think that they're super Bible experts. They're not. They go to their tools and their favorite commentaries to prepare their sermons, most of them, and they don't have much more Bible knowledge than you do. They really don't. That's why their sermons are so terrible. But anyway, what they're really good at is managing people. You say, well, my pastor's not good at managing people. Really? Does everybody at that, does he have a church of more than 150 people? Yeah. Do they all call him pastor? Yeah. Do most of them pay a tithe to pay his salary so that he will continue to be the pastor? Yeah. Do they all defer to him for spiritual matters? Yeah. Okay, so anyway, pastors are really good at managing people, and specifically managing their perceptions. And in small churches, what they do is they learn who you are, and they learn your weaknesses, and they capitalize on that. And if you ever have questions about the Bible or questions about their teaching, they know all your weaknesses, and then when you ask the question that threatens them, they turn it around real quick on you and bring up your weaknesses. And you go away. For what they do, I've seen this so many times, is they actually pretend to agree with you about your point. And you think, oh, well, I guess I had it wrong after all. I thought he was going to just, kick me right out of the office. I thought he was an enemy of the truth, but he seems to agree with it. But while he's agreeing with it and you're at peace, you go, oh, I was all tense. I went into the office. I wanted to ask him about this teaching, and he put me at ease. And all my tension just went out of my body. And I'm just so relaxed because he was so nice to me. And I just felt like, what was I worried about? And then while you're in that state where your tension's gone and your guard is down and you think he agrees with you, he subtly says something about your personal life and challenges you to improve something about your personal life. And you go, yeah, of course, and you go away. And then a day later, that thing that he suggested starts to eat at you. And it starts to grow and grow and grow, and you start to feel more and more condemned, and you realize that it wasn't a little thing he was pointing out. He was saying that the whole reason that you have any questions about the teaching or about the church or about his leadership or about that anything might be off is because you've got an attitude problem. You're not right with God. He can tell because of your marriage that you're not right with God. You're not doing enough. You're totally in the flesh. You're basically backslidden. But he said it so nice, and you were filled with so much peace because all the tension had left your body, because he didn't bite your head off, because you went in there thinking you were going to, see, it takes a lot of courage for a beaten sheep to go into the pastor's office and say, you may be backloading works into the gospel, we may have to leave or something like that. And what usually happens is they get all turned around and they leave and they think that the pastor's their best friend. Believe me, I know, because I've been through this many times. And you leave, and when you realize you've been manipulated, it's almost too late. And it took me a while to realize I'd been manipulated. I didn't know I'd been manipulated. I thought I had it all wrong. That poor man, how many people come to him and attack him every day that he has to put up with? And here I am, and he's right. My personal life is a wreck. My heart is not right with the Lord, and I'm not keeping the commandment. He turned it all around. But why was I able to receive it all of a sudden when just before I went into the meeting, I was all geared up, ready to call him out for backloading words in the gospel because I'd gotten clear on the truth? Well, because he hit me with a dopamine hit. What it means to manage people and manipulate them is to use body chemistry and biological and chemical signals and pheromones and everything to screw with people's chemistry while they're in your presence and defeat them without actually addressing any actual issues. And you're not saying what they think you're saying. You present one thing, but you're actually doing something else. This is what leadership skills are. This is what managing people's all about. And so I told this person basically that, look, don't go meet with your pastor, because you're going to get, you're all worked up. You want to leave. You're clear right now. But you're going to go in there. They're going to call you out. First of all, they're going to pretend to agree with you. They're going to take away. They know all the arguments. And they don't have the kind of conscience you do. They went to seminary where they were required to agree with every position and argue from every point of view and say, I've seen pastors write position papers from different points of view, like a debate class. My conscience wouldn't allow me to do that. I couldn't argue as if hyper-dispensationalism was true. But I've seen that that's what a lot of these position papers force them to do. If you're going to get an A on the paper, you have to damage yourself by standing apart from your conscience and arguing as if some of these things were true. What does that do? That teaches you how to manage people so that you can argue any position in the moment and make them think that you believe what they believe. Give them, they say, if they have a problem with your legalistic teaching and they want to make sure that you understand grace, tell them you believe grace. Oh yeah, I believe grace. I saw, this is what happened to me at so many churches, but the Reformed Church, I could never get them to admit they were Calvinists, because every time I would come to them and talk about the grace of Christ, they would agree with me on every point. It wasn't until later that I realized, look, if they never speak these things from the pulpit, it's because it's not in them. And the way they're agreeing with me on every point is to handle me. It's to be at peace with me. They don't actually mean it. And every time I would get with them, they would agree with me on every point and then insert an accusation into the conversation that I wouldn't realize until later that it had gone under my, armor and gotten through. It's a fiery dart that happens later. It's demonic. And later the accusation would hit home. It's amazing. They take you go in with your armor on, they take your armor off by agreeing with you, and you go, oh, I have peace. Recently there was a pastor emailing me back and forth about 1 John 1:9. He seemed to agree with everything I said, and I thought, well, I'm getting somewhere with him, Then he did a post where he incorporated all of my language. He used our language, but inserted a little leaven in there to make me realize what he's doing is he's not listening to what I'm saying to learn anything other than how to cloak his works view of that passage in a more grace language so that he can circulate among the people I teach and pretend to be like one of us, but insert the leaven of sin confession in there. It was the same kind of thing. It's what pastors have learned to do. I fell for it again. a year or two ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago maybe, the last conversation I had with a certain pastor on the phone, he called me screaming, David, Benjamin, you're blah, 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 blah. And I was getting ready to yell at him, and I said, well, yeah, but that's not true, And somehow he immediately changed his tone. He went from railing and yelling to completely soft. And when he did that, all the tension went out of my body. And then I said, okay, well, I guess I didn't see it that way. He said, I forgot what he said, but he said something, and I said, well, I guess I didn't see it that way. And we ended it by praying. And I'm like, well, then let's pray about it. And we prayed, and at the end of the conversation, I thought we'd made peace. And we got out the phone, and about an hour later, I realized I've been manipulated again. And it was funny because I actually got on my YouTube channel and did a little announcement. Well, okay, turned out that we had a misunderstanding, and I misunderstood this and that and this and that, and that's what he was trying to get out of me, was to get me to make a public statement from my YouTube channel. But it was a complete thing where he was using he ramped me up with the yelling. It didn't mean anything to him. But why does that work for certain people like sheep? I went in and out of so many of these abusive situations. Well, because I have a very sensitive conscience, believe it or not. Very sensitive. And if I know there's a brother who could be entreated, they have the testimony of Christ, I will go the extra mile, believe it or not. As much as you've seen me on YouTube where I'll just, if somebody turns and has an accursed gospel, has a public platform, and is railing against us and mischaracterizing our teaching, I'll eventually get to a point where you'll see me. But I wait quite a while before that happens usually. That's what people don't see. But if there's ever a chance that we could actually be reconciled, I will actually go for it. If it looks like they'll actually change their mind about the truth. Not if they won't change their mind about the truth. The truth first. You can't be my friend if you don't believe the truth. I don't need friends. I need people walking together in the truth. How can we walk together unless we're agreed? But if I see someone who's changing his mind about the truth, then maybe. Well, quite a few people actually have taken advantage of that and have approached me in guile and said, and basically been able to regurgitate my language and make it sound like they totally get it now, and they were wrong, and now they get it. And that was just a way to get me to open the door so they could get in and do more damage. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm much more guarded, But the point is these people are expert manipulators. And if you're in an institutional church, they've been doing it the whole time to you. And you think you're going to go tell the pastor of what your sudden realization, you're just now starting to realize what backloading the works gospel is. The pastor knows what backloading works is. He's had this conversation with many people who are gone now. They're all out the door. They disappeared before you ever showed up at the church. He knows how to handle them, and he knows how to handle you, and he knows your weakness. So I told her all this. Don't do it. That's my advice. Just leave. The reason you want to go and explain to the pastor is a dead work itself. Because your conscience is, you're wanting something for your conscience to feel good about yourself leaving. But that's a dead work. So what do you need to do? You need to come to the blood of Jesus, and you need to say, I'm crucified to the world and the world to me. I don't care what they think of me. They're going to think badly of you. You're not going to be able to leave and them think it's okay. You are going to be viewed as the apostate. You're going to be viewed as the rebellious and disobedient one, and you're going to have to accept that judgment from them. It is what it is. You're not going to convince them of anything. In their mind, they're absolutely right. And if you go and try to seek some dialogue with them, all you're doing is putting yourself back in the position of dancing with them again. You're going to have anxiety attacks, more condemnation. You're going to stay much longer than you wanted to stay. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to see the tension you're in, and they're going to alleviate it, because that's what they're good at doing. They're good at reading people. They're good at seeing and sensing. I think literally on a biochemical level, they can feel people's emotional state, and they can send you signals that actually change your chemical state, where you go from super, super nervous to suddenly at peace, and you'll think it's the peace of God. You go, I was just totally all worked up in the flesh. That was the devil. And then while you're in this state of absolute peace with your brother in the fellowship, they will launch a little bit of an attack in a very gentle way, but it will be devastating. It'll be based on personal knowledge of you. It'll be said with smooth words in a sweet way. And while you hear it, it won't bother you that much. But when you go home, it'll hit like a ton of bricks, and you might have an anxiety attack. I remember I was getting sicker and sicker, and I'm like, I don't feel good. I just feel... My wife's like, you're just so pale. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I can't... I feel like I'm going to throw up. I don't know what's going on. I got a headache. I was having an anxiety attack, as the implications of what he'd accused me of. He had somehow spoke to the very foundation of my spiritual life, and I didn't even realize it, because that pastor made me so vulnerable when I went and met him, and had me so turned around within just a couple minutes, because he was doing some kind of, I swear it's some kind of witchcraft. You got to realize that a false gospel is not just somebody getting information wrong. It's a doctrine of demons. It's a spirit of error. There are demons behind things that bring you into bondage. Behind these strongholds, there's demons. It's unclean. And you've been there against your own interests for a long time by being veiled and being befuddled and being drunk with this demonic wine, really. And now you're sobering up, and it's not pleasant. But to go in there and try to negotiate with the one that brought you into bondage in the first place is not wise. You're on their turf, and they're protecting their turf, and they're the experts there. They've got it all figured out, and they've got your number. So that's my advice. Anyway, they finally left, and I think that she sent me an email and said, okay, I did send him an email and just said, we're leaving, your backloading works in the gospel. And he said, give me a call, because I want to show you what the Bible really says. Very condescending, as if she doesn't know. And she just told him, no, I'm not going to call you. I don't want to talk to you. What you're doing is, I know people who are absolutely exhausted in your church, and they're being damaged by your teaching, and you don't care about them, and you don't care about me. And good. And it's going to be hard for her for a while, for her conscience. She's going to question. But you got to make a cold break, and you got to say, I'm crucified to the world, and the world to me. Forget that which lies behind. You don't owe them anything. That's why Jesus said, let the dead bury their dead. You come follow me. He never said, let's go see if we can convince some of these Pharisees how right we are. No, move on. All right, take care.